That's how you slip into second and third place on the global scale. You're not doing the things when it comes to the civil unrest. You know it's there. When it comes to the poverty, you know it's there. When it comes to the infrastructure of America compared to Dubai, China, you know it's there. When you look at the education, you know it's there. We're slipping. We've slipped. So how many areas can you slip in before everything you have built or everything you're broadcasting you are is really not true anymore? We are live in Flexworks Studios. Hello, Black America. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you find yourself in the world, we are happy you're here with us. Shout out to Africa. We might be coming sooner than we thought. Some new things happening on the horizon here in the States. We have a new president-elect. At the time of this recording, and I think no matter when you're listening to it, it's going to be relevant because we want to hold him accountable to some things that he says he's going to do. And if he does those things, well, we want to talk about how he's going to do them. Should be interesting as we discuss some of the main topics that as it relates to us. Because again, everyone has their own issues, but what we're interested in is what's going to affect Black America. So I got my brother Curtis Cheatham on my left side. How are you, sir?
I am fantastic today. It's a great day to be alive.
Yes, it is. It is. Kawan on my right. How are you, sir? And we got the world's greatest theme music playing. Shout out to New Alchemist. Thank you to everybody who's taking the time to watch the show, review the show, comment. We want to hear your thoughts, on every platform, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Shout out to the subscribers joining our movement. It's free to join. So, Curtis, what are you feeling? What are you feeling in the last, since this, there's a new tide coming.
Red tide? I don't know. Listen, right now I'm feeling this music. Listen, every time it gets me and I want to get the bop going, but then my head looks like a bobblehead on the camera, so I try to avoid it. But in all seriousness, obviously we're in a new time now, right? We've got the 2024 election cycle has come to an end, and it's not the way we thought it was going to end. From the excitement that we were seeing in America at that time during this last 100+ days has been exciting. And we thought, it reinvigorated our electorate, which it did. But apparently everybody was invigorated, and the supporters of former President Trump came out actually in about the same numbers that they came out before. But the narrative now is that not as many people supported Vice President Kamala Harris as supported Joe Biden when he ran.
Yeah. And the serious topics we're going to discuss over the next hour are, as the greatest theme music in the world fades out, there's a couple concerns that I have my eyes on, and I'm interested in, getting some feedback from you guys concerning these things. The mass deportation is obviously a hot topic. It's a day one agenda. I'm hearing, there's reports 15 million people. That's the target. That's the goal. And expanding qualified immunity. Now, we're going to play those clips. So, in fact, we'll just leave some time for Kawan to just rock those clips for you. So these are all things he said. Expanding immunity for police officers so that they can enforce law and order, mass deportation of 15 million people. And the third caveat for me that I got my eye on is what's going to happen with NATO and how that's going to, if it happens, affect the world security-wise. And so, what are the main things that are, that come to mind when you consider what a new, presidency under Donald Trump could look like?
Well, certainly the things you mentioned are top of mind, but another thing that just keeps ringing in my mind is this dissolving the education department and the things that are mentioned in the Project 2025, which during the election cycle he was trying to distance himself from. Now that he's been elected, or he's a president-elect, he's seemingly has gone full head back into this Project 2025 by actually appointing people to be in his cabinet who were the authors of Project 2025.
Really?
So for him to try and distance himself was obviously a political move. And now that we see him rising back to power again, we see that was a farce.
Is that a fact, though?
That is.
That's
indeed.
a fact. So
that
we
is
have people that were involved in the
writing of the
writing of Project 2025 that are now in the cabinet.
Absolutely. People that are unabashedly white nationalists in a lot of cases.
See, because that was a surprise to me, because I have a couple close friends, and all they've been telling me is the left is making it about Project 2025, and Donald Trump does not endorse it. He obviously said he didn't know about it. So I find it interesting that these people who have been involved with Project 2025 are being hired for the president's cabinet. I mean, I'm interested in my boys. Hey, what y'all think about that? And you know who I'm talking to, because every one of us has a friend that told us when we were worried about this Project 2025 that he had nothing to do with it,
right? That
he didn't endorse it. So why is he hiring people who actually co-authored it?
It's ironic that you've heard the saying, how do you know a politician's lying? Because his lips are moving.
Facts. Of course.
I think you exponentially increase that when you're talking about former President Trump. He's not shown himself to be exactly honest in his communication.
Well, listen.
A lot of times.
We gotta be careful, because they'll come for us.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
So now let's remain as independent as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
While acknowledging facts that these things just don't sit right when you claim to. I never knew the guy.
Yeah.
And then.
Right.
Next thing you know, we look up and you guys are buddy.
Yeah, hanging out, right?
So, okay, so obviously the dissolving the Department of Education, these are all things that we want to kind of go deep on in this conversation. Anything else top of mind? We got expanding qualified immunity for police officers. We have the mass deportation of potentially 15 million people. We have, and again, we're just talking about how this is going to look. We're not criticizing the policy necessarily. Mm-hmm. We're just really talking about how this is going to look. We're talking about potentially dissolving NATO. And again, I believe, well, I haven't said it yet, but I know millions of people are going to support that, because the dissolving of NATO is going to come, I think, what I see is in the name of let's mind our own business.
Right.
And the American public is going to say, you know what? That's a good idea. We've had so many years of being in other people's business, other countries' business, investing money in other countries, especially, considering the Ukraine war and how much money we've seen sent over there. So I'm deeply concerned with what a dissolving of NATO is going to look like, especially, given the support from the American public. And then we got the Department of Education. So and anything in particular in Project 2025 that you want to go deep on? Because I really want us to, if we can pick a couple things that we keep our eye on over the next couple months, and we watch how, and we might say, I mean, I'm going to give what I think is the worst case scenario.
Right.
And I think it's going to happen. And I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm watching to see and keep track and make sure it doesn't happen with some of these things. Go ahead.
Well, for me, in my mind, the education piece is the biggest piece, because let's go back to the enslavement of blacks, right? We weren't allowed to be educated. We weren't allowed to learn. In fact, it was illegal, and there were important ramifications if you were caught trying to educate a black person, right? Now, when you combine that with the fact that I believe the powers that be in general want an uninformed electorate. They don't want people to be able to think through these issues clearly. They want you to be able to, they want to be able to tell you what to think or what this issue is all about, and have you accept that wholeheartedly and just go along with it. Whereas if you had an informed electorate that could think critically about the issues and come to their own decisions, then they're not as controllable. They're not as malleable. So I think that it's almost a dumbing down of America. We're taking civics out of our classrooms now. You're starting to see where education is just taking a back seat. We don't want people to be educated too much.
And we're not even competing globally on any level.
Not at all.
With any of the best countries.
Not at all.
Kawan will throw some of the education statistics up for America compared to other countries and where we rank. We rank low in so many issues, so many areas. It's amazing. And like you said, it just seems like we just don't take it seriously.
We like to beat our chest and say how great America is. And the theory about America is a great theory. Every man, democracy, every man created equal. We've fallen a little short sometimes in the execution of that. And that's problematic. We need to really live up to the ideals that we've set forth, the ideals that people are wanting to come here for. Unfortunately, we haven't always seen those things play out in that way. And, that's the disappointment. When you have so many people who are upset, is because it doesn't seem like the character of America is living up to what we've stated it should be.
No. And it's the writing is on the walls at this point, where you start to see, you're on a boat, right? And a little leak springs up. That's one thing, okay. But when you start to see the second leak, and then, okay, when you look at, and I mean multiple areas that the house starts crumbling, and America has some things that it has deferred for a very long time and basically kicked the can down the road and said, okay, we're going to eventually get to these things. And that's how you slip into second and third place on the global scale. You're not doing the things when it comes to the civil unrest. It's there. When it comes to the poverty, it's there. When it comes to the infrastructure of America compared to Dubai, China, it's there. When you look at the education, it's there. We're slipping. We've slipped. So how many areas can you slip in before everything you have built or everything you're broadcasting is really not true anymore?
Well, the only thing that America's really number one in these days is military might. We're the biggest bully on the block. Let's face it. Nobody wants to go against the American military, which is bottom line. There's none better, really. There's nothing. Nobody's better armed than we are. So because we have that, we tend to think that makes us number one.
It's like a dude that just come in knocking people out.
Exactly.
Dude can't talk. Hey, you try to have a conversation with him, he can't put two words together, but he'll knock eight people out.
What is that? Debo.
Right.
So America's Debo, I guess.
Absolutely.
Is what we're saying.
Absolutely. But what happened to Debo at the end?
There you go, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
But we're not number one in education. We probably rank pretty high as far as the money is concerned, as far as one of the richer nations. But when you start talking about homelessness and health care,
well, look at the debt compared to look at the debt,
all those things, we're not so high up, and we can get into that a little bit more on the other side of the break.
Yeah.
But I'd really like to delve into. I really want to have us talk through what this mass deportation thing looks like. I know you have some thoughts about it. I have some thoughts as well. We're going to cover that when we come back. Just a minute on Hello, Black America.
Who you know can take these syllables and tie them in a bow. Ancestors made it off the boat. Swear I need my reparations. He been dreaming way too long. The struggle I done made it from. Just because my skin golden tone, you know they think I'm dumb. Grit the wheel and crew the street. Diamonds in my Pat Philippe. The mentals of a country boy. Hustle like an athlete. Missing sleep. Still hear the screams of the slaves. Let breath from his lips. Blood covering of his face. Yeah. Boxing full of money. Ain't no bank account. Don't need a loan. Whole school ride clean.
So, in the last segment, we were just kind of discussing the end of this 2024 political season and which things are most concern us, or which things we think are most impactful to Black America. We talked a little about education in the first segment, but one other thing that we need to get into is his promise to deport up to 15 million people.
Up to 15 million.
Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that 15 million people are going to actually leave America. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know, is he going to start with the people working at Mar-a-Lago that aren't there?
Hey, potentially. They're on the real estate development sites. There's a lot of people. I've talked about this in our neighborhoods in East Orange, where you walk by some of these real estate development sites, and you could just see that there's a lot of people from various countries. Do we know if they're all legal or not? No, we don't. But we do know that if they're not legal, then they're taking jobs from people who should be working there legally. And they're gonna hurt the wages, because they're gonna work for less, because they're gonna be paid cash, and these are jobs that our community should have. So I don't debate the idea of people who shouldn't be in the country not being in the country. But what I do consider is really two things. One, the focus on certain types of people, be it ethnicities or the way they look, versus other immigrants, and what that means second when it comes time to get them. Because who's going to do this job? If we're going to deport, I'm going to hold President Trump accountable to what he said he's going to do, just as we would do any politician as an independent broadcast. We would hold anybody accountable to just the things they said. We're not pulling up any political commentary of someone else who said this. We only want to focus on what specifically come out of President Trump's mouth. How do we do it? Because when you consider the National Guard, in his Time magazine interview, he said, when they asked him, would you consider using the military? He said, probably the National Guard. It's going to take all hands on deck, because you can't pull this many people from their existing jobs to this new role of basically, being an extension of, ICE, so to speak, and having them do brand new tasks for 40 hours a week. What about the job that you pulled them from? So we're going to need a lot of new people coming in. And here's what I'm watching for: the Proud Boys. I'm watching for the private militia who is already raising their hand. You need us to do the job. We're here for you.
perhaps some of those people from Charlottesville, Virginia,
Anybody willing to do the job, because at this, there's people who want to do this job. There's people who are like
volunteering.
You ain't got to pay me for the first 30 days. Let me get in there, raise some hell. Y'all might not want to pay me after you see what I'm going to do in the first 30 days. And this is truly my concern. Who's going to do this job? Go ahead. What you got?
That is certainly a concern of mine as well. But you said something at the beginning of your statement there. You don't know who is. You can't tell who's a citizen by looking at them, right? So those brown folks that are walking the streets, it becomes like the stop and frisk thing in New York City, right? We're gonna assume you're not supposed to be here.
Facts.
Until you can prove that you are supposed to be here. Now, that's pretty easy for most of us. It's, a lot of Black Americans, we present a certain way, but now we've got the Haitians and the statement that he made during that they were eating the cats and the dogs, and now those Black folks that look like, you can't tell who's a Haitian and who's,
they coming for us.
So
we just got implicated.
Absolutely.
As soon as, and listen, my Haitian brothers, y'all are implicated too. Like everybody, when he had his eye on Mexicans, everyone who looked like if you halfway look like a Mexican, you were in trouble.
Everybody will start working on their English diction.
Very
so that
clearly.
They can speak clearly and properly,
Very
no
clearly.
accents.
If you got any trace of an accent, you are in trouble in these coming days.
Listen.
And look, we're, again.
It's not funny, but
but you got to laugh to stop from crying.
Exactly. It's crazy.
Because this is the reality. You could either sit up here and tell us, we don't think he's going to do it, which I've heard some people say. Why would you assume that? If you said, okay, it's just, in one breath you say, what I like about Trump is he does what he says he's going to do. And then in another breath, you talk out the other side of your mouth and say, I don't think he's going to do something he specifically not just said he's going to do, but ran on.
Absolutely.
He ran on this specific thing and said this is a day one agenda. He's already hired somebody who looks like a guy who... You see the guy he hired? Kawan gonna put a picture of this guy. Looks like he sleeps in a coffin, wakes up. Like this guy looks like and listen, I don't mean like this guy looks like I don't know. This guy looks like death walking. Dangerous guy. Looks like he used to bodyguard for celebrities and just not say anything. Looks like he can shoot, fight. That's just what I think of.
He was a former law enforcement officer, if I recall. So he's got that background. And,
It's not like you brought a guy in that people are like, oh, we could tell he's for the people. He's an innocent-looking guy. You ain't got to.
Well, he's choosing people that have already proclaimed fealty to him. They've already, kissed the ring, And that's the only way that you're able to get a job in this new administration is to have shown, that you were going to be loyal to him throughout all his claims of stolen election from the last time, et cetera, et cetera. If you remain loyal to him, you've got a shot. Now, he gets flat out told Pompeo and Nikki Haley, sorry, no room for you.
Yeah.
A lot of times Nikki Haley hasn't really distance herself from him that much, but maybe a little bit. She's tried to distance herself, but she didn't totally do so, and that's not enough loyalty for him. So he's told her she's persona non grata in this new iteration of his administration. So from that perspective, it's a little frightening to see the people that he's gathering.
It's like there's no heart there. There's very little. I'm not going to say these guys don't have heart. I'm going to tell you that they look very stoic. They look like, so are you going to break up families? No, we'll deport them all together.
That's the guy. And he said that I guess it was on 60 Minutes or something. I saw him, and yeah, he actually made that statement.
Serious?
Like, is the commentator asked him, "Is there any way to stop from splitting up families?" Yeah, we can ship them all home.
All home.
You know, and
that and quick. So when we consider the people, and this is how they speak, why would we think that the people who are going to be enforcing and doing the job would have a different heart? Because here's what I see. Hey, bro, you Haitian? Nah, man, I ain't. I'm American.
Why don't you run me some ID?
Yeah. Hey, you got your papers on you? You know.
What, my freedom papers?
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
What kind of papers?
Papers. Hey, do me a favor. Hey, see, depends on who's doing the job. That's the energy that's coming. I see it. People, hey, how you doing? Hey, yeah, you got any migrants in here? Who's coming in the house? Are the people coming in looking like local law enforcement that we know and trust and like, hey, Officer Jones? No, this is some guy, this is some group that just was newly hired, doesn't know anything about this town, was sent in under federal order, given instructions on where people are. I mean, how do you deport 15 million people in a country with over 100 million households without going and checking people's houses? That means literally if there's let's call it 100 some odd million households, you're talking about potentially 1 out of every 5, 1 out of every 6 households might be harboring somebody. They have to check the houses.
Yeah, that's probably not going to work out well. I don't think. I don't know. I'm not putting that out there. I'm just saying it's a little impractical, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what people are focused on. The one thing that I hearken back to is this.
There's no Congress to stop it.
Well, that part.
Sorry.
But
we'll talk about that later.
People are acting as if in President Trump's first administration, he also ran on building a wall. That means that there was an immigration problem at that point too. He went through 4 years, and I found it so interesting that his narrative during this campaign time was that Vice President Kamala Harris, she's been in office for 3.5 years, and she hasn't done anything about any of these things. Now, this is where that critical thinking comes in again. Mm-hmm. If you ran on a platform of immigration back in 2016, and then you were president until 2020, and the immigration problem still existed at the end of your presidency, then how can you now say about someone else who was not the top lawmaker and not the top executive, was a vice president, and saying that in 3.5 years she didn't do what she was supposed to do? So he ran on this and very issue.
The country agrees,
and we never did anything because we don't teach people to think.
Listen,
if you can't think that through and be like, well, wait a second, you're telling us immigration is this huge problem, yet you ran on immigration, in your first term. You didn't solve it. You didn't build the wall. You didn't do what you said. Mexico did not build the wall and pay for it.
That's a fact. That's a fact. See, I think when we consider how Trump's presidency came about, in my opinion, you just didn't have a strong enough candidate to go against that personality. And, no one knew who. A lot of people who were calling to vote for Kamala Harris, if you'd have heard them talk about her a year ago, True. They in no way. They were saying it was a bad pick. They were saying it was a bad pick for VP. I mean, I know people who literally was saying when Joe Biden was starting to kind of struggle, they were like, man, dang, he shouldn't have picked Kamala. Mm-hmm. Because everybody was saying, man, you're praying for, Michelle Obama. Will she just come out of
right.
her not? This is what people are saying. Nobody was.
Or Gavin Newsom or somebody like that.
Somebody who can go. Right. Somebody who is basically. It's sad to say that we're in a world where these personalities take over, but at the end of the day, we live in a world of viral videos, and a lot of people don't see these things happening unless they went viral. So, it's hard for Kamala to compete with Trump, who is going to go viral on his own. He has 80 million followers.
He has that personality.
And again, that's another. So when to wrap up the mass deportation thing, I want to segue too into another thing that's disturbing me concerning these concentrated alliances that are essentially a media propaganda machine, depending on how it's used. And what I mean is, if Rogan has the biggest podcast on earth and Donald Trump has 90 million followers on Twitter or X, Elon Musk has 200 million followers, that right there is, that's three guys that could speak to pretty much the whole United States.
Now, pardon my ignorance about the whole, the way the social media works, but how many of those, the question that you want to ask is, how many of those are how much crossover is there?
Very, very little.
So, really?
I would say very little. 200 million?
If there's 200 million, how much of the 200 million that President Trump has are also followers of Joe Rogan? So they're not separate and distinct.
They don't just have audiences. The same audiences.
But I'm sure there's got to be a lot of overlap.
There's some overlap, but it's not when you consider who these people. Let's look at the origination. Elon Musk gains his followers originally by being one of this generation's foremost leaders and brilliant minds, and he's built things in the tech world. That's not Donald Trump's audience. How he started it, he starts as a real estate developer, entertainer. That's how he built it. Rogan starts out Fear Factor, and then UFC, and right. These people are coming from different places when they're following these guys. You throw Tucker, what's his name? Tucker Carlson in there. Mm-hmm. You throw Tucker Carlson in there, and he's another, guy who speaks to 100 million people when he wants to. And that's a Fox News audience that he brought and cultivated over the years. So when we look at the concentration of media, this is dangerous to let four people who agree on certain things speak to billions of people, because the world is watching. And when we consider what the new antitrust laws should look like, the new antitrust laws should not muffle speech, but definitely watch the collusion because how can someone compete when four guys can speak to 500 million people? How can a news platform compete? What's to stop them from tyranny?
Yeah, we need to talk about the media, and let's get into that a little bit more on the other side of the break. Hello, Black America.
Hello, Black
Since
America.
2020, I've been showing people everything car dealers like the one I'm standing in front of don't want you to know about car buying. Things like you don't need a down payment to get a great deal, you don't need to be a great negotiator, and you definitely don't need to spend more than 30 minutes in a car dealership. I spent 14 years in the car business, 5 with Mercedes-Benz, 5 with General Motors, and I just released my new digital book, Cars from Home, 7 Steps to Saving Time, Money, and Avoiding Dealerships. It's already 5-star rated, and I want the entire Hello Black America audience to have a copy at 75% off. So go to carsfromhomebook.com, use promo code HBA as in Hello Black America, and don't forget to send me your success story. If you're enjoying what you're watching, the easiest thing you could do to support us is hit that like button. Let's get back to it.
Donald Trump wants to expand qualified immunity for police officers. So under the guise of, increasing law and order. Can you explain to me why police officers need more immunity from potential? They already have qualified immunity, which is why, it's very difficult to prosecute a police officer. Why would they need that expanded?
That is one of the more frightening things as a black man in America. when you see the series of events that have gone on in America from the last, well, it's been going on since forever, from Emmett Till and that sort of thing, to now you've got obviously George Floyd, Mike Brown. The one that touches my heart is Tamir Rice.
Yes. Sonia Massey, Breonna Taylor.
We can call their names. We could spend the rest of this show calling their names and not reach them all. Yep. If we could remember them all and say them all, we could spend the rest of our time on this show today and not say all the names of the people. And the presiding narrative becomes, oh, they should have complied, and there's no excuse.
It's always that.
There's no excuse for making the police judge, jury, and executioner without any culpability at all. You know,
no due process.
I think it was Chris Rock that said there's some professions where, you know, you just can't afford to have bad apples. You know, you can't.
Yeah.
You know, like a pilot. You know, it's like you can't have a pilot that's having a bad day and decides to just get up there and fly. No, you cannot do that, because they have life and death in their hands. And police officers, you give them this weapon on the side of their body that they can use, but they can use it. They should have some sort of responsibility attached with it. Mm-hmm. With great power there's supposed to be responsibility associated with that. To whom much is given, much is required.
Absolutely.
And you give these people the power to take somebody's life, literally, and yet you're not calling them to any sort of accountability, any sort of responsibility as far as that's concerned.
But do they know? I wonder how many police officers know that their profession as a whole originated from catching slaves.
In the early American colonies, policing was neither centralized nor standardized. Groups of night watchmen and patrols often worked under a hodgepodge of different systems depending on their geographical locations. Their aims were fairly similar, as property owners and private companies contracted people for hire as protection from thieves and ne'er-do-wells. In a bitterly ironic twist, colonial settlers were especially paranoid that nearby displaced indigenous peoples might encroach on their settlements. Between the 1630s and 1700, Boston, New York, and Philadelphia implemented night watch systems that mostly relied on volunteers, though some were paid. These people would sign up for dates and times to patrol, often sent to make sure locals were neither gambling nor engaging in sex work-related activities. This system was extremely inefficient, as night watch also served as punishment for some people, tempting volunteers to participate in the vices they were meant to watch. Frequently, these night watchmen spent their shifts getting drunk and falling asleep while on duty. Southern colonies focused on protecting other forms of property. Priorities rested on the maintenance of human chattel, enslaved Africans upholding colonial economies. The first American slave patrols were formed in the first decade of the 18th century in the Carolinas. These groups of 3 to 6 patrolmen often traveled on horseback, carrying whips, ropes, and guns. Enslavement led to the enactment of slave codes that patrols enforced. Night watches in the northern colonies had similar duties. Though chattel enslavement was less practiced there, these watches were still tasked with controlling enslaved populations. Connecticut and New York even passed slave laws that served the same function. These laws criminalized attempts at escape and rebellions of the enslaved against their enslavers.
They all know. They have to.
So if you know that it originated from catching slaves, 2 people are going to sign up for that job and use that information in 2 different ways. One is, okay, cool, that's what it was, but it's different now. And another person is like, well, my great-great-grandfather was, I remember the plantation. I remember the stories. I still see the pictures. I still see it. And we're only 1 generation removed, potentially no generation removed from police officers that have been some of the most wicked police officers in some of these small towns. I remember my father told me about his friend. He said that he pulled up in a town and he's in a Mercedes. So, black guy in a Mercedes. Guy pulls him over and, he's a proud black man. So he got his papers, he owns his car, he makes his money. And so it's kind of like a sheriff or deputy, something, not a cop. So you know when you're dealing with a sheriff or deputy or something, and that's who's pulling you over, say a prayer. So they asked him for his papers. He gave him his papers. This guy asked him to step out the car. He said, what am I getting out the car for? He said, just step out the car, please. He said, I'm not getting out the car. He reached through the window and grabbed him out the car.
Right.
And, you know, how many times we've already seen it on camera, which is why we look at a global audience and call a global audience to witness the events that have happened and that will happen, because that instance, that encounter is what I see happening again. I see it happening, but not in small towns anymore. Because if you don't have any threat of prosecution, we already know there are bad cops out here. We have family that are cops. We love our cops. We love our law enforcement. We wouldn't be safe without them.
Right.
But it would be disingenuous and an outright lie to say that we don't have people with anger problems, emotional problems, hate, racial bias.
Let me tell you something here. So, all right. I'm in 7th grade, right? I got out. My parents took me out of public schools because I was starting to get a little trouble.
Yeah.
And they moved me to a private Christian school. 7th grade. There was only like 8 people in the class. So, but in a lot of ways, they were all people that had trouble adjusting in the public school system for whatever reason. So we're all in the Christian school. We get into this, we had this big field behind the school where we'd go and play. And I got into it one day with this little guy. Little, I mean, we were all little, I guess, in 7th grade. Not me, but, we got into it.
Been the same size since you was in.
I really was.
That's how you making
really
it sound.
I actually was, but not much difference. But anyway, we get into it, and he the thing is, he gets into go back to Africa.
Pull that.
I'm from New Orleans. I've never been to Africa. I don't know. At this point in my life, I have no concept of what Africa is. Go back to Africa, you jungle bunny, something to that effect. I 2, 3, 5-pieced him. I don't know what it was, but he got his comeuppance. Fast forward 10, 12 years later, this guy's a cop.
Never fail.
He's a cop. He's a local police officer in town.
It's always the ones who got chipped up in school. It's always the ones I'm gonna get y'all one day. They in their bedrooms punching their fists.
Oh my goodness!
Can't beat nobody.
And you know what?
Joining the police academy.
And that's just it. There's so many frightened. These are guys that got beat up, a lot of them.
Absolutely.
And I'm not casting
we can attest to that.
A blanket.
I guarantee everyone watching knows someone from their school that you can list the guy in the chat and let us know. Man, every town, every school has people who were the punks who just 10 years later, they're the cops.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is. It's the guys that are insecure.
Yep.
Maybe they didn't fare so well with the ladies, or maybe they got beat up a lot. And now you put this uniform on, you get this training with this weapon, and you have power.
Yep.
And you can tell
People
sometimes when they come up to the car, or wherever they meet you,
usually
you
5'4",
but they come with this arrogance. You know, so often you see them escalate rather than de-escalate.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. That's something that we really ought to be more cognizant of and more thoughtful about, is when you're putting these people in these positions, there needs to be some sort of accountability, some sort of responsibility.
There won't be. It's over.
I've heard us say
it's gone left.
We need
the
to
brakes have got off the brakes have broken off the train.
Absolutely.
What was the saying? What?
We're off the rails.
Yes, that's it. Everything you were hoping that you say, we really need to get these guys some training and some anger management, and no, we've gone left now.
Right.
Now there's going to be total immunity
for the president and for the police.
the president and the police. So you're talking about millions of police, let's call it thousands of police officers that have not been healed from their life issues that are out here exercising power and have no threat of repercussion.
Absolutely.
Cannot be held accountable. This is going to be anarchy.
It's going to be a bad. I don't even want to put it out there, but when you keep stomping on somebody, at some point it explodes.
Yeah.
You can't just keep. Sooner or later that energy is going to come out somewhere.
And what we really got to consider is, you speak about it a lot, hint at it, especially concerning some of the prophecies that we discussed is, a civil war, and what that looks like, and what it could put. See, all cops aren't going to go for it,
right?
There's some phenomenal cops that are about to draw the line in the sand.
Yes.
There are some people within the immigration system that are about to draw the line in the sand.
And the military?
In the military that are about to draw that line. There are...
That's what a civil war looks like, though.
Correct.
Brother against brother, right?
Correct.
Listen, if you think that this is going to be like some sort of race war where it's the black folks against the white folks, no, it's gonna be more
good side.
It's good and evil.
Evil side.
Absolutely.
And both
and you
sides,
got to choose.
And you're gonna have to choose.
Right.
And you reneged. America reneged. You remember? America literally said, "You want to be free. You want liberty. You want to be whoever you want to be. You want to serve whatever God you want to serve. Come to America." They was like Suge Knight. Remember? You tired of the executive producer
being
all in the videos, all on the songs? Come to death row. That's how they advertised America.
Not to us.
They oppressing you out there in those countries.
They didn't. Hey, we didn't get that.
No, we didn't. We didn't get
you.
we didn't get it.
Come on.
Yeah, everybody but us got that welcome wagon. Come over here, y'all. Y'all gonna be good here. And they decide, we tired of that. What we advertised our country as, liberty, justice for all, we're tired of that. Because liberty looks fine as long as the people look like the lawmakers. What's about to happen now is the lawmakers are going to make laws for the people who look like them first, and your liberty is going to be based on if you look like them, if you're the same sex as them, women, if you are the same color as them, the same race as them, if you have the same economic status as them, you're going to be fine.
Right.
If you have the same alliances, the same moral values as them, you'll be fine. But the rest of us, those laws are going to start to look like they're not for us. Or they are for us, maybe to check us, to control us, but this is my worry. Yeah. These are some of the worries we have here, and you no longer have any checks and balances. Now they have the House. They got the Senate on election night.
Absolutely.
They have the majority in the Supreme Court.
And they have immunity for the president.
And they have immunity for the president. Yeah. There is no checks and balances in the MAGA government.
It's going to be this is going to be the most interesting 4 years of any of our lives. I don't know. I don't want to put any predictions out there. I don't want to.
I do.
I'm going to leave that to you. But I'm not going to front. I've been thinking that, and this is a real serious thought for a moment. And I don't know what it looks like, but I remember vividly having the thought prior to the election, what if somehow this serves God's purpose? And I don't know what that purpose is. Mm-hmm. But I know personally, I've had the thought, what if what if this guy wins and it's actually what God wants? Because, it's a thought that I had. It's almost like a premonition that I had. You remember Rodney King, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
Years ago today, her father, Rodney King, was beaten by police on this Lakeview Terrace street. His skull fractured, bones and teeth broken. He was left with permanent brain damage.
A part of him died that night. Even though he died 9 years ago, a huge part of him died that night.
The acquittal of 4 white police officers led to protests and riots. And although she was just a little girl at the time, Laura King has made it her life mission to keep her father's legacy alive.
Here it is again, 30 years, and where are we? We're still in the same state of mind. People are still getting slaughtered for the color of their skin, not because of who they are.
Celebrating her father's life with a passionate plea for change and a strong message of hope.
I'm honored to look around the room and see the different shades, not just African American, not just white, not just Asian, actually everybody, because we're all brothers and sisters. If we close our eyes, we all are the same color.
I know y'all a little younger than me, so I wanted to
of
make
course.
sure I had the
I was
time
definitely-
reference.
Especially with these topics we discussing, of course.
So I remember when Rodney
legend.
King happened, and this was obviously all pre-cell phone cameras, but they caught this on camera, the police whooping his behind, right? And in my mind, it was obvious. We've got it on camera. This is a new phenomenon. We see it. What we've known has been going on in our community for years. Now we see it. It's been captured on camera. Great. These guys are going to get their justice, and this is going to move us forward as a people. And then after we got the whole dramatic thing about moving the trial to Semi Valley rather than in Los Angeles, those men, and I had the thought at that time, what if they actually
Get off.
get off? And it was just a momentary thought that went over my body, but it was just prior to, and then when they said they were not guilty, I was like, and I feel a little bit
On camera.
Absolutely. I feel like we're having that kind of moment again, where it's just
You're not
going
going to be able to. You're not going to on camera. We're having those moments.
The
And
revolution is being televised.
before our eyes.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Black America.
So with unchecked power, no checks and balances, MAGA owns the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judiciary. There's no one to stop him from doing anything he wants to do. And again, we're not considering anything other than what he said he's going to do. Now,
Keep in mind that he exhausted and used up a lot of the professional people that kept him in check during his first administration.
Sure.
Those people are
They're
gone
no longer
now.
here.
So
They're no longer here.
all pretty much all the adults are out of the room.
yeah.
now.
And good luck being somebody who's a Democrat. We're praying for you, or an independent or a moderate Republican who's in there trying to say no to what's being voted, what's being brought to the table. We will be praying for you daily because we know your life is about to be hell.
They getting steamrolled.
Good luck. Good luck coming to work every day
Absolutely.
and having to look a group of aligned people in the face and vote no when these people, listen, look, Ted Green, I've forgotten, this is the mayor of East Orange.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see how the city council votes, yes, clearly there's an agenda not to say no here. So if that's on a city level, you're saying no to the most powerful person in the world at this particular time? We feel for you. So let's just assume that many of you are going to be drinking, depressed, not coming to work, quitting your jobs. And it's for good reason. It's for good reason, because I know this is not what you signed up for when you got into public service. So what is going to happen when you quit your job? And this is the conundrum. Well, there's an open seat. So let's just bring another person in who aligns. They have these people strategically set up. You're going to see Democratic mayors and non-MAGA mayors all across the country. I said this months ago, being indicted. It's coming. So when we talk about what Trump has said concern, get your house in order. So you might as well just leave now, try to clean up the paper trail. Any little thing they could find, I guarantee they're coming into Democratic mayors' houses. And I mean like the city hall, because it's just too easy, because the people are going to rally for it. This is what I said when I wrote this months ago. When I said I see these mayors being indicted, the people are going to champion it, because the mayor don't really do nothing for us anyway. So now you have done that for, decades and definitely years, where there's been this kind of gap between, and they've told us, unfortunately, we fall short in local civics where we come from in our communities. We're not at the city council meetings at scale. We're not at the school board meetings. But one thing we are going to be at is the indictment of the mayor of our city out there when News 12 is out there. What y'all think about him? He ain't never did nothing for this city anyway. The gentrification, he got all these people buying this stuff. And the same people who you thought were your people are going to be rallying for you to be in jail. And that's the same way I see this whole NATO thing happening. Decisions that are going to empower MAGA, that are going to look like they're good. But what are the ramifications? Donald Trump said NATO isn't paying. Everyone's not paying. We're paying a lot of money, and we're not getting, people aren't paying their fair share. I think at this particular point, America's tired of, being in people's backyards. We're in everybody's country, from Afghanistan to Iraq. I mean, look at how many countries we've been through in the last 20 years and just 25 years. And then when you consider the debt and how much money we're making, everyone's going to say, that's good. Come on home. Forget that NATO thing.
Let me ask a question, because I'm gonna admit that I'm no expert on NATO, but just something you just said struck me. So we're gonna back out of NATO because other countries aren't paying what they're supposed to pay. America has, what's the debt service for America? How much do we owe other countries? I mean, we are in debt. Trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. So, I mean.
To the country or to the Fed?
To the Fed.
Either one,
Fed.
We owe China a lot of money.
Through the Fed.
Because they've invested heavily in America. Mm-hmm. So we owe these countries a lot of money.
Yep.
So I don't know. I guess we haven't defaulted on those loans, I guess. So technically, I guess we could say we're still paying them. But I don't know. It just seems like there's something a little amiss here. Is that we're going to back out of these agreements that we have with NATO because they're not paying their due. Give them a bill.
And it's not even there. How many of them are not paying? There's lots of them
that
are paying.
Right. So we're going to just leave them. We're kicking them to the
whole
curb
deal's
too, right?
off. You know what? He didn't pay.
So
all of y'all are screwed.
Yeah, because he didn't pay.
Right. And this is what and so when you just consider that is there another reason he's talking about pulling it off the table? Because if one country out of all of them or two are not paying, is there another event? That can't be the reason that you're going to kill the whole deal. But do you see an opportunity? in dissolving NATO? Do you see that we're the most, you said something, but we're the most powerful military by far in the world. There's an interesting prophecy in the book of Revelation that says kings will run the last days. Dictators will run the last days. And we've been so worried about the Democratic parties moving to globalism. But what we should be worried about is global dictatorship. Because how hard is it, and this is what I see, and I pray I'm wrong, how hard is it for NATO to be done? He goes in, NATO's done. The United States says, yes, great, we got more money coming. But Trump looks and says, okay, Ukraine, you're on your own. What's the country next to China that China been wanting to take for a long time? Malaysia, Taiwan, on your own. I was just talking to somebody who works for one of the companies that I have, my other company. He's in Bangladesh. He said, I said, ain't the guy who runs the country next to you, India, isn't he becoming like a dictator? He said, yeah, Modi. I said, okay, so you're not worried about if, NATO ends? He's like, well, we're a friendly country. Nobody really messes with us. Well, I'm going to tell you what, if you're living next door to a dictator, it ain't about you being friendly. That's his territory.
Listen, he might be like,
who defends them?
Right.
You can't defend yourself, Bangladesh. You can't defend yourself, Taiwan, Ukraine. None of these countries alone can defend themselves. What's to stop 8 dictators, 8, because the prophecy says there'll be 8, from just snatching up territory surrounding them? And in Trump's case, if I have 200 military bases around this around this world, what's to stop me from imposing my military will? Because again, what armies do they have? Can they individually fight against the U.S. military at scale in the event of a tyrannical government?
Well, the frightening thing, and to your point there, the frightening thing is that there are nuclear-armed countries in the world. Probably Iran, Russia. There's China, North Korea.
Yep.
All these. There are several
All
countries that have these nuclear weapons at their disposal. Now, of course, the only one that's ever actually used those nuclear weapons is the United States. But it doesn't take a bunch of them, to start firing off these nuclear weapons to just basically end the world. A couple of unhinged dictators with the nuclear weapon code at their disposal, and you can't say this is never going to happen, that cooler heads are going to prevail, because, in my parents' lifetime, we've seen nuclear weapons dispatched.
The H-bomb.
Right. So the fact of the matter is
The
that
A-bomb or the H-bomb?
That was the A-bomb.
Okay.
it was a bomb with nuclear boom capacities.
That's a fact.
That's the only thing I can tell you about
That's
it.
a fact.
And, so we have to be really mindful, really careful right now. And if cooler heads don't prevail, if intellect doesn't prevail, if critical thinking doesn't prevail, I'm frightened to see what this world's going to look like in a few years. Now, I don't have little children anymore. My daughters are grown, and prayerfully they'll be fine. But I wouldn't want to be raising up small children at this time. It's a frightening time where things that we thought were settled, we're finding out aren't settled. For years we thought we had the civil rights thing taken care of.
Yeah, moving in the right direction.
Well, we don't need that anymore. Let's take that away.
Yeah.
Then, women thought they had their rights.
Not even teach it.
They thought they had their bodily autonomy in order and that there was no problem there. Psych, let's take that away,
Yep.
And we're just seeing little by little our
Take America
rights
back.
just getting sliced away
Repeat of
until
history.
we're right back.
Yeah.
It's going to
50,
be
70, 100 years ago.
I said it in jest, but I think that we might have gotten set back several generations at this time because it's the what do you call it, the slingshot effect or maybe the rebound effect. It's like because we pushed ourselves so far in one direction and then now it seems to just kind of be snapping back, which is kind of the natural reaction of people. But when you don't, it starts back when the first Civil War, right? We never held those people that seceded from the government, from the country. We never really held them accountable. It's like, okay, yeah, we know y'all start a whole war.
No, yeah,
but
they kind of faded into the
right,
background.
and you just let them just go back into
you ever
the background.
see the Homer Simpson meme?
Yeah.
Where he just fades into the bush. You had all these people.
Yeah, okay, we'll just take a little step back now for a while.
All of these people that caused all of this anarchy in the name of hate and hate for black people, just, all right, we're going to fade and act like but we're still here.
Yeah.
And we have kids.
Yeah.
And we teach our kids how, we should have won that.
Yeah. And that's a powerful point you just made. And what I'm thinking about is those pictures of lynchings in America where the little kids were there watching black bodies being strung up from trees.
Absolutely.
What does that do to that person?
Hello,
what
Black
does
America.
that person become? The way that those sort of traumas play on us and how they are manifest in years to come is really a frightening thing that we really need to be more cognizant of.
Absolutely.
So
this is the watch list. This is our watch list. The MAGA watch list, okay? We're going to hold you accountable to doing what you said you were going to do. We're going to hold you accountable to deporting 15 million people. We want to know how you're going to do it. We're going to be watching. We're going to hold you accountable to expanding immunity for police officers. We want to know what type of collateral damage that's going to cause to our people. We're going to be watching. We want to know what you're going to do with the education system and how that's going to affect our cities and our children and our youth. We're going to be watching. We want to know what you're going to do concerning NATO and the global defense. And if you're going to make an alliance with kings, with monarchs, with dictators, with authoritarian governments in the name of peace, so that you can secure the nuclear conversations. Everyone's going to say, oh, it's better when our governments are aligned. All the nuclear weapon governments are aligned. But the prophecy said that's going to happen. So we're going to be watching. We're going to be watching. Africa. Diaspora. You better understand what's happening. You better understand the times we're in. You better get uncomfortable now. This is not the time to be comfortable. We got a guest coming up soon who's been living in Egypt for a last couple years. Young guy, brilliant guy. We look forward to having him here because he's been shouting from the hills that more people should be moving to Egypt. And we're gonna find more people like him because we need to know where we're going. We need to know where to visit. Because I'm not gonna sit here and we're not gonna sit here every week and talk doom and gloom. We're gonna talk about the plans and where we move when things get hot. We're not gonna stay in boiling water and be like the frog that gets boiled slowly. You're gonna jump out that water as soon as we feel the heat being turned up. So tap in. Thank you to everybody who watched. Thank you to my brothers. We couldn't do this without you guys. Let us know your opinions. How do you think these things are gonna happen? Everything we discussed, do you see it happening our way? In the ways we wanna hear from you. Because if you could open up our understanding, we're open to it. But we'd be lying if we said we weren't worried.
Hello, Black America.